We are back at it with a home repair. This time it is our furnace that's not working. It is not heating the air. The blower works, so there's airflow, but there's no hot air. So I started checking into that. The igniter was the first thing that I saw was an issue, was not igniting and lighting to heat the air. So I replaced that first. It was the cheapest and quickest to get. That did not solve the problem. So instead of wasting more money and time guessing, I did some research and found this video that I'm going to link below that helps diagnose every step of the way from the furnace turning on, the process of it functioning, and what one thing needs to happen before the next thing can happen. Without trying to explain that video, just watch it down below if you're trying to solve your own furnace problems. It's not necessarily the same model you may have, but every furnace generally operates the same way. I noticed with mine, which is a York furnace, the wiring was a little different, but you know, if you're a decent problem solver, you can kind of figure out based on the video what's a little different with yours and where to check things, different color wires, things like that. But you're basically just tracing wires from pieces of the equipment and the motors back to the control board and so forth. So you're basically just tracing lines, checking the using a multimeter to check the voltages at these areas to verify that it is working and sending the next signal appropriately to the next function of the furnace. And as always, if you're not comfortable working on things like this, then definitely hire a professional. I've done some work on central air units and things like that before. I am perfectly comfortable doing what I'm doing. But again, if you're uncertain or you can't quite figure it out, just call a professional and they will charge you appropriately to fix your problem. But fix things yourself obviously saves a lot of money. So if you have the time, try to fix it yourself. Otherwise, hopefully you have the money to pay somebody else to fix it for you. This is a natural gas furnace. So you're dealing with the natural gas and you're dealing with electricity, things like that. So just be safe with what you're doing. Obviously shut off all the power supplies before opening the cabinets. Mine has a nice little switch here that kills power to the whole unit, so I can operate the power supply from down here while I'm working. And most of them have that. Some just have a plug to plug it in without a switch. The switch just makes it more convenient, so you're not having to plug and unplug your unit while you're working on it. So this is my open cabinet here. This is the blower with control board mounted in this bottom part of the cabinet. My multimeter's set up. I've been using this ground here where the door switch is. Up underneath is a little screw where that ground screws through, and I just attach my lead to that to get ground when I'm checking things. Inducer motor is here. Pressure switch. Igniter in the back there, that's the white block with these wires coming down here. This is the gas switch, so everything kind of leads to another as far as your blower motor turning on first, then your inducer motor, and these all send signals to other things to operate as long as those prove to work, and your control board controls it all. So you know, the video, like I said, that I linked down below, it's extremely helpful for following along with the functionality of the furnace and describing what happens first before the next function. And if one thing doesn't prove to work, then the next function will not work. And that's all for safety, because you're dealing with natural gas coming in, so pressure switch has to operate properly, or else it's not going to let your gas flow in or even ignite your igniter to then be able to let your gas flow in to ignite. So this is basically your combustion chamber, and you have your vent pipes here to circulate air so that you don't have harmful air circulating in your house or leaking into your house. We diagnosed the issue and I've narrowed it down to the pressure switch. So I just took the two screws off. It just mounts up underneath this firebox here. So I just took them out so I could access the data on this pressure switch, and I'm going to look up the availability and order it and then swap that out, and then most likely that is going to solve the problem. Hello. Today's the day. I got the pressure switch in the mail, and of course it came on a day where we had to drive to North Carolina for a wedding. So we were leaving at 5 o'clock to drive 8 hours to North Carolina. I saw in the afternoon that the delivery notification came that the part was here. So I quickly put the part in to try to get the heat working before we left. And that bare terminal right there is a different size than the wiring, than the connection end. So I had to just scrap it and leave it sit for 4 days till I got back from North Carolina. Now I'm back and ready to go. So this new one is, I switched hoses already. Here's the old one here. It's slightly different in that the terminals are located in a different location. And like I said, that terminal right there is a different size than the wiring, than the female end to connect it. And I didn't have any connectors, so I just ran to Home Depot. And here's a cool story. Because of supply chain issues, there are no female connectors, only male at Home Depot. So I ended up having to buy this whole kit. Even though I have this tool, I needed to buy this whole kit. It was only $7, but I needed these terminals, so I bought this whole kit to be able to get them and finish this project. So the terminals are labeled, so you know which wire to hook up to which terminal. So see that NO there next to that terminal. On the new one, there is NC and NO. So you know which wire to connect to which terminal. So now we're just going to replace this end to the bigger size so that it'll fit on that terminal. All right, the new end is crimped on, and we're gonna just hook it up to that terminal there and give this thing a try. Well, friends, that pressure switch there did not solve the problem either. It does now prove, so I've hooked up that new pressure switch and tested it, and the same thing occurs. The igniter does not light. So, but that now proves. So as I was checking voltage of things in sequential order of the startup of a furnace, I'm finding that there is only 6 volts from the control board back there going to the igniter, and it's supposed to have 120 volts. So the control board is not sending enough voltage to turn the igniter on, and that is the next thing in sequence. So I was at first thinking there was a gas valve issue, and that was not allowing the igniter to light, but after having this shut down, it should go through another startup sequence, and the igniter technically should be getting voltage before the gas valve even opens. So until the igniter operates, the next thing in sequence, which is opening the gas valve, is not going to happen. That leads me to believe it's a faulty control board. It was sending different signals. The first one was obviously the pressure switch, saying it was bad, and that could have been bad, but replace that. It's now proving good with a voltage meter, and now it's still not sending enough voltage to the igniter. So I did order a new control board. This was 150 bucks, and I will link down below where I got that through Amazon. It is not a name brand control board. It is an aftermarket. This is an older furnace, so I don't know that I'd even be able to get a brand name, but this is a like for like control board. It had all positive reviews, so I figured I'd give it a try. 150 bucks. So now we're going to swap out the control board and hope that finally gives me heat. And this new one actually comes with a brand new mounting bracket too. So we will look back here and see how this one's mounted, measure some holes and see if that's going to line up, or I may have to install the new mounting bracket to the blower housing there in order for me to mount the new control board. All right, I'm moving right along here. So what I've done is started unplugging one for one connections. I start at the bottom of the board, and you want to basically read the new board and the connections to make sure you're connecting like for like wires to the right connection. So the new board does have a little bit different configuration than the old board, but everything is labeled. So you basically just unplug one wire and match that connection to the new board. And then the old board, I just took some snips and cut those plastic mounts there to make it a little easier to maneuver. But now I'm just popping out the rest of these plastic mounts, because the new board has mounts already on it. So I just have to clear them to be able to mount that new board onto the plate. All right, the new board is mounted, but I did have to drill new holes because the mounting pattern for the new board is different than the old board. So I just got my drill set, marked new holes, drilled, and pushed that into place. So that is now mounted, and I can finish swapping out wires across the top and then plug in my 2 clusters, and then we can test it. All right, everything is wired up like for like. There are 2 yellow connections, as well as 2 cooling connections on this new board. The old board just had 1 cool and 1 yellow. So what I do is just use the high cool terminal and then the second terminal for yellow. And one thing I had to do to make room for getting to the board swapped was disconnect this hose. So we're hooking that back up before we test everything. All right, I have just the fan on. Put up the thermostat, shut the settings off except the fan, and that turned on, and there's just a steady green blinking light. So far, it's doing what it's supposed to. Now we're gonna go change the settings, call for heat, and see what happens. Oh, the joys of working on your own home. So I got everything set up, new control board hooked in, wired up correctly, voltage tested everything was going good, and then it did trigger a fault. So after the testing sequence, it takes about a minute and a half or so, it did trigger a fault, and it's the same fault for the pressure switch, like the old board before I changed the pressure switch. So I did more voltage testing and everything was proving good except that new pressure switch. So for posterity, I switch the old pressure switch back into the system, and lo and behold, everything works. So now I am installing the old pressure switch back in, and because I changed that connection size, I'm gonna have to change it back and hope there's enough slack to reach after putting the right size back on to fit this pressure switch, and we should be good to go. And I'll definitely be returning this pressure switch. All right, we're gonna test this up. Got this pressure switch, the old pressure switch, back installed. We're gonna turn that on. It's gonna go through some self-diagnostics. Inducer motor is gonna kick on first for the induction fan. Series of clicks. There's the inducer motor kicking on. Brand new igniter lighting up. Gas is released. Igniter's burners are lit. And then the blower should kick on back there. Blower's on, and we have heat. All right, we're all buttoned up here. I have heat again. I am going to return that pressure switch that I ordered because obviously that wasn't the problem. I still think it was the control board all along, sending faulty codes and then not enough voltage to other components. So it was hard to test things if you have a faulty control board. So new control board, new igniter, which ended up probably not being needed, but it was a cheap part, and I'll link all the parts down below that I did get and utilize. But I'll be returning that pressure switch to get some money back. But another successful home improvement. Now I know a little bit more about furnaces, so moving forward I can apply that knowledge to more repairs, and hopefully it won't take as long to solve some things. And pro tip, this specific control board is wired reverse polarity from what the York furnaces are. So I did see that in the reviews on Amazon when I was looking at the information on this control board. So when you install it, you do have to switch the 2 wires coming off the transformer to the control board. So where you normally would plug them in, you just switch it from hot to neutral, and that reverses the polarity, so it works fine. So that is something that, had I not seen and researched in the reviews of Amazon, it was said many, many times in the reviews by multiple people saying that the polarity is opposite. So I took that piece of information and I did need to apply that to my install. So as you saw in this project, there were multiple problems that had to be solved in order to keep moving forward to solving the overall issue with the furnace not lighting. So just keep your cool, keep your patience. and learn as you go, and you should be able to pretty much solve anything with home repairs anyway. But again, always do things safely. So you have to have a little bit of knowledge of electricity to know when you're working on something hot or not, because you can electrocute yourself working on electrical stuff, and that is not good. Always remember to do things safely though. So when you're working on things that have power to them, make sure they are powered off. Each adjustment you make, when you're checking voltage of things, make sure things are grounded properly, or else you can zap yourself when you're checking for voltage. So again, if you're not comfortable working on this kind of stuff, then call a professional. Otherwise, there is plenty of information out there, and hopefully this video finds you and helps you at some point also. And hopefully this video finds someone who's in need of help and helps them get past some of the issues that I had, because it was multiple places where I had to go to actually find the information to apply it to my specific problem, just because all the different models of units there are. The control board that I got works with multiple brands of units, so things are slightly different across the board. But all in all, this project for me was very helpful because it's the first time I had to work on a furnace, and everything worked out well, and it's now fixed. I didn't have to call a repairman, and now the next time I know a little bit more to apply to solving problems with the furnace. And like I always say, time is everything, money is a tool, and we can't afford to waste either one. Until next time, last tag.